Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar on the new draft Trinity Campus Travel Plan. My name is Claire Byrne. I'm the Sustainable Travel Officer for Trinity College Dublin. And I'd also like to welcome our guests from DBFL Consultants who drafted the plan, Robert Kelly and Shauna Kelly, who are going to talk you through the key aspects of this new campus travel plan, which is really a roadmap of solutions which will help us reach our transport-related greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. And I want to also welcome our Sustainability Communications Officer, Katie Byrne, who's helping us with this recording today. So as I said, this webinar is really just to give you an overview of this new campus travel plan and the key highlights and actions within that plan. As you're probably aware, Trinity is fully committed to playing our part in the climate fight. And you can read more about these efforts in our sustainability strategy on the website. But in a nutshell, the wider strategy aims to tackle climate change and reach net zero emissions by 2040. It wants to restore biodiversity and be nature positive by 2030. And it wants to create a healthy future for everyone by improving our physical and mental health by 2030. In Ireland, transport emissions account for about 21% of our total national emissions. And while we saw like a really small reduction last year, we really need to be doing much better if we're to reach our climate targets, both internally in Trinity and also nationally and internationally. And Trinity is like a key stakeholder within the city. So it's really important that we play our part. And while we do have our own targets set out in our sustainability strategy, as a public sector organisation, we're also committed under the public sector mandate to reduce our overall emissions by 51% by 2030 and by 50% for transport emissions by 2030. Trinity is doing pretty well. At the moment, about 97% of our staff and students do travel or commute to our campuses by public transport or active travel. But we really need to start tackling that final 3 to 5%. And this campus travel plan is going to help us reach those emission reduction targets. And really what it does is it sets out those challenges and the solutions and ultimately aims to promote sustainable travel to all campus locations by students, staff and visitors, and to reduce the number of vehicles accessing the College Green campus. DBFL have been working tirelessly on this over the last year, and there's been a huge amount of engagement with all relevant stakeholders. But given the significance of the plan, we wanted to give you one more chance to find out more about it and to share your views on it. So this plan, it contains 59 actions, as I said, to progress towards this overall vision of a calmer, safer, lower carbon campus. And these are presented under 5 key themes, which are around walking and wheeling, cycling, public transport, vehicle access, and visitors and tourism. So before I hand you over to DBFL, who are the experts on this plan, I just wanted to highlight some key dates over the next week or two that'll give you yet another opportunity to learn more about the campus travel plan and to share your own views. So Shauna and Robert are going to be with us in person next week on Thursday, the 25th of September from 11 till 4 in the atrium all day. So you can drop in for a chat and have a cup of tea or coffee and a sweet treat and find out more about the plan. The following week, the sustainability team will be in the arts block on Tuesday and Wednesday. And the campus travel plan survey is going to be open from the 22nd of September to the 1st of October. By filling out a very short survey, you can win some prizes by just participating. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Robert and Shauna. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Claire. So we're delighted to be here today following, I suppose, 16 to 18 months of solid work to develop this draft campus travel plan for Trinity College. And so today we'll only really touch the surface of the detail that's gone behind the plan. I suppose myself and Shauna have been working on this project since March last year. I'm a director in transportation for DBFL, and Shauna's my colleague working on the transportation team as well, both ex-graduates of Trinity. So we were really excited to work on this project. So what we'll do today, I'll take the first section of the presentation and I'll kind of bring some context to the plan, how we ended up working in this plan, and I suppose some of the context of the policy behind that. Shauna will go into it in a bit more detail in terms of the data that we gleaned and analysed to inform the plan, and we'll both share as in a summary of the actions that are emerging from the plan. Claire has touched on the fact that there's 59 actions, and we'll just give a flavour of those actions. And as I say, the plan provides further information. So really, why or what is the campus travel plan? I suppose what it is, it provides a basis for the sustainable development of Trinity College from a transportation perspective, looking at different forms of transport, and the way that people access the campus and the way that the campus operates, and looking at doing new types of mobility and focusing on kind of sustainable modes of travel to, as Claire rightfully says, to help the college meet its climate action targets. So what we did is we undertook a considerable stakeholder consultation exercise to inform this draft plan, and now we're seeking further feedback on the plan before we finalise that in the remainder of this year. So the plan itself summarises the local transport developments in the vicinity of Trinity College, because there are a number of initiatives which have an influence on how people access the campus. And we looked back at trends in how people access the campus historically, and how there's been changes in the way people access Trinity. Some figures that we've looked at, which Shauna will go into in greater detail in a few moments' time. And then we put forward a number of actions which give Trinity College targets to work towards, with the overall objective of reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. But obviously as well, there's a significant health benefit to the use of sustainable modes. So why was it needed? I suppose the campus travel plan was a key emerging action from the sustainability strategy developed for the campus. But in essence, it enables Trinity College to further understand its travel behaviours, the existing environment surrounding the campus itself, and to look in greater detail at some of the data and the numbers, as we've pointed out there in the second bullet point there. While Trinity is ideally located to avail of public transport, active travel, etc., within a city centre campus location, there are a number of remote campus locations away from the College Green, which obviously there's an increased travel demand between College Green campus and newer locations such as Ivy Sports Ground. And so what we've noticed is, despite the progressive and really encouraging modal splits, we've noticed that there actually has been a slight backward step in terms of the number of people walking and cycling. And so we had to scrutinise that and look at what were the reasons behind that. So the campus travel plan is also key in positioning Trinity to benefit from future pedestrian and cycle enhancements, and also the various public transport initiatives proposed as part of the wider city centre transport plan being developed by are being implemented at this stage by Dublin City Council and supported by the National Transport Authority. Another key aspect of, while we're trying to encourage active travel and sustainable transport as options, we want to look at current travel behaviours and whether they relate to kind of the use of the private car within the campus, as the university has an obligation under the Climate Action Plan to review its car parking strategy. So just to focus a small bit on the city centre transport plan, which people maybe have been aware of. It's obviously been in the public sphere for over a year and a half now at this stage, and it's been implemented now on a phased basis, and a number of initiatives which people may have noticed emerging. First being the modification to the quays to provide for bus priority, but closer to the Trinity College Green campus. Other aspects which are implemented more recently were the modification to the Westland Road Pier Street junction to provide for greater levels of public transport accessibility, but also then future initiatives which we engage with Dublin City Council, with Claire and her team, to find out further detail as to regard to the proposals to reconfigure Pier Street, which provides an exciting opportunity to deliver enhanced infrastructure for pedestrians, cyclists, and in conjunction with a more attractive public realm. So that's a major plan which has been developed by Dublin City Council's active travel unit at present, and is maybe a few years away, but we're hopeful within the life cycle of this campus travel plan that that infrastructure will be implemented. And then further closer to the campus as well, and probably what is the focal point of the vehicular access point for the campus, is the pedestrianisation of Lincoln Place, close to Lincoln Gate. Again, we spent a lot of time analysing the proposals there as they currently stand under the city centre transport plan to try and assess whether that initiative would have an acceptable and manageable impact on the campus itself. So we'll touch on that a bit later as well. The stakeholder consultation today, as we said, we're here today to present the draft plan. Getting to this point, getting to a draft plan took a lot of effort and a lot of engagement from people internally within Trinity and externally, as we mentioned before, Dublin City Council and the different departments, the National Transport Authority. But we'd like to put on record or express our gratitude for the various departments within Trinity College who really spent a lot of time with us over the initial phases of this project to develop our understanding of how the campus operates, whether they be groups such as the SU, Student Union, or Trinity Disability. They really gave us their perspectives on how they would like to see the campus operate in the future, but obviously the issues and challenges they are presented with as things currently stand. As well, then we got into the operational side of the campus and of the university as well. We spent a lot of time with estates and facilities, Trinity security, library, sports. Everybody really contributed a valuable amount of their time, and it really went into informing our perspectives in developing the plan. So just to kind of emphasize the point that while a lot of our focus tends to be around College Green campus, the plan focuses on not just the College Green campus, but obviously those locations and facilities which are further remote from the city centre. And so there is a wide and varied travel behaviours, I suppose, in accessing these different facilities throughout. Not only we have the Santry Sports Grounds, we now have the Ivy Sports Grounds to consider. Obviously, staying to the west of the city, we have the Island Bridge Boathouse and then the connection to St James's Hospital, where we have with Trinity medical students using facilities there. And then obviously Trinity Hall student residences as well. And that was a key part of our considerations in terms of the linkages and the quality of infrastructure that's available for students travelling to and from Trinity Hall into the different campus locations as well. And so Shauna, I'll hand over to you if you want to touch on some of the more analytical and data-driven side of the campus travel plan.
That's perfect. Thanks, Rob. So it's kind of talked about before, but you can see here that there's the results of the travel surveys over the last 14 years for staff and students commuting into the college. So it's really positive to see an increase in public transport. You can see that bus travel is the most popular option for getting into the campus. Then you have the train or the DART, and then walking falls behind that. You have the Lewis too. But with all this increase in public transport, we haven't seen a huge decrease in car travel, but we've seen a massive decrease in walking and cycling. And the public transport piece is really, really good in terms of sustainability, but it just doesn't bring the same benefits to physical and mental health as active commuting can. Sorry, Rob, next slide. So then looking at these figures, we decided to set some targets of how we can bring walking and cycling and wheeling back up to previous levels. So we see these targets as really realistic because they aim to get close to where it was, but we're not trying to overshoot it too heavily because we're conscious of how things have changed with regards to, say, housing, etc., for students at the college. And we've developed a new travel survey, and we're going to use that to monitor our progress towards these targets every single year. So as was mentioned already, the way we're going to hit these targets is through using the 59 actions which have been set out across the 5 key themes for the plan. So these fall under walking and wheeling, cycling, public transport, vehicle access, and visitors and tourism. So under each of these topics, we've looked at what are the existing conditions and how are people travelling through these modes at the moment, what future plans are going to impact how these work, and then how can we use all these future plans with our actions to improve all the facilities going forward. So for walking and wheeling, some of the key findings that we found after we carried out some surveys around the cordon of the College Green campus was that there are 9 gates which are in regular use for pedestrians during the academic term. Unsurprisingly, the busiest of these gates turned out to be Front Arch, Nassau Street and the Naughton Institute, which are really popular for staff, students and tourists coming into the campus and visitors. And generally, the campus is really, really well connected to the city in terms of pedestrian facilities. It's in the middle of everything and there's footpaths everywhere, but sometimes these are just not hitting the mark. Like you can see up there in the right-hand corner that some of the footpaths, say, outside the Nassau Street entrance are very narrow. And that's fine if it's quiet, but if it's busy, people end up on the road, or if you're using mobility aid of some kind, then you might not be able to get through properly. And despite the fact that there are 9 entrances in regular use, there's still some permeability issues around the campus, and the key one being along Pierce Street, where there's a lack of clarity on what gates are open when, and generally there's not as many gates open as the other sides. Then some of the actions we've come up with to address and improve walking and wheeling facilities around the campus is to look at improving information about the gate opening times. So as I mentioned, a lot of these gates are open during the year, but it's not very clear when those hours are, and if people can't rely on when that's going to be, they're not going to use them. We're looking to install pedestrian counters to better understand pedestrian activity across the year instead of just on a typical week, as might be done with traditional survey methods. We want to look at making sure all benches and furniture is returned quickly. If it's been moved, it's something that was brought to our attention that often for special events and for fire safety reasons, benches get moved and they're not always put back quickly, which can impact on pedestrians who aren't fully able-bodied or who might need to take a rest. We're also looking to increase campus permeability to the north, as I mentioned there along Pierce Street. That might be utilising what's already there. We're looking at opening new accesses and expanding the number of enabled pathways and wheeling ramps across the campus to make it generally more accessible for a wider variety of pedestrians. And then looking at the theme of cycling. So one of the key things we did here, which I'll touch on next, is we evaluated cycling routes between 5 key campus locations on the College Green campus to look at how these could be improved and use that data to lobby Dublin City Council on improving these connections for students. So something that came up on all those routes was a lack of coherence generally. And this thing, which you'll see a lot across Dublin, which is the presence of bus stops and cycle lanes, and that's causing cyclists to have to swerve into traffic, which can be really dangerous. We also found out from our surveys that the most popular gate for cyclists coming into the campus is there at Lincoln Place, where you have 42% of cyclists coming in and out of the campus through that gate. But it's not exactly the safest gate for them to be using, because that security barrier means that they're either clashing with pedestrians and cycling on the footpath, or they have to go the wrong way around the one-way system, which is particularly dangerous at the moment with all the construction traffic down at E3. Another thing that we found out is that although there is a lot of good cycle parking available, it's not always in the right places and it's not always easy to find. So that picture there is of some of the newest secure cycle parking down under the railway arches. So that parking is only accessible to staff and students with their T card, and there's showers and all down there, but it's not shown on any maps and it was never advertised that it was opened. And also then our kind of final key finding I want to highlight in cycling is that it's not all just about standard bikes on the campus. There's really clear demand for parking for different types of bikes. So there's a picture there of cargo bike parking at the creche, where people are trying to park on regular cycle stands, but it's quite awkward to balance such long bikes in those little stands, especially if you're taking children in and out or have other cargo with you. So as I mentioned, we looked at cycle routes between the College Green campus and some of the external campuses around the city. So looked at routes to Trinity East, looked at a quiet and direct route to Trinity Hall, looked at routes to Ivy Grounds, St James's Hospital, and then up to Kavanagh Court student accommodation. So we had people go out and cycle these routes, record footage, get on the ground experience, and we evaluated the quality of the routes in terms of the safety, comfort, directness, coherence, and then this kind of varying needs of different types of cyclists, different ages, abilities, and genders. So then issues that we found that were really common across all of the routes were this kind of poor road markings, where it's not always clear when a cycle lane ends, or in one direction there might be room for cyclists to stop in front of the traffic lights in advanced stop line, but there might not be in the other direction, and it's confusing motorists and cyclists. As I mentioned previously, the lack of continuous segregation between vehicles and cyclists. So there's often kind of stretches where it's segregated, but that's not necessarily good enough because cyclists aren't really sure how to enter the lane at the beginning or end. There's generally narrow parking along all of these routes where it's parallel parking on the road, and sometimes this is just too narrow when you have vans, etc., say loading, so then they're encroaching on the cycle lane and it's just something else that cyclists have to swerve around, which is really dangerous. And then this issue again that I mentioned about bus stops being very frequent along most routes and it becoming an issue of cyclists having to swerve around a bus sometimes. And then some of the key actions we'd like to highlight around cycling are the need to increase the number of standard and non-standard cycle parking spaces at all different campus locations. So this isn't just your regular Sheffield stands, it's looking at more secure parking, parking for non-standard bikes such as those cargo bikes I mentioned, or tricycles or hand cycles. Then creating barrier-free access for cyclists at Lincoln Place. We know that's where they're trying to enter the campus at the moment, but it's just not safe enough. And providing up-to-date information on the location of cycle parking. So when new parking is put in, it'd be really good to see that advertised and students and staff can then know where that is. We'd like to run regular bike maintenance workshops so that students and staff can be more confident that they can deal with issues on their bike if they come up, and that it's then more reliable as a mode, that a simple puncture won't put you out for a week. Be really good to set up a bike library as well, we've highlighted. So this would be a system where people could borrow different types of bikes to try them out and see how it fits with their lifestyle before they commit to buying one, and then organise secondhand bike sales to deal with the issue of bikes being abandoned at the end of the, say, term when sometimes Erasmus students have left, or people just leave their bikes behind when they don't need them anymore and don't want to bring them home. And then look at providing proper charging for e-bikes and e-scooters now that they're legal modes and there's some fire safety concerns about their charging indoors.
Thanks, Shauna. So Shauna's brought us through a summary of the actions for 2 of the 5 themes. So I'll finish out with the remaining 3 themes. So they're namely public transport being the first. So as Shauna's kind of summarised quite neatly there, the proposals in relation to active travel, but obviously we want to encourage continued high use of public transport. The recent figures are really encouraging, but obviously there's major public transport infrastructural upgrades proposed in the Dublin area. And while Metrolink, the delivery of Metrolink might follow the lifetime of this plan, I guess we want to put forward actions that will position the campus in the best possible state to avail of that when it does arrive, namely the station it's proposed along Pearse Street. So Shauna touched on the permeability, improved permeability to Pearse Street, for example, and that's a key initiative really to not only avail of existing public transport, but obviously the future proposals, not only in the form of DART plus West, Metrolink, and then Bus Connects as well. As some of the key findings summarised there, which kind of shows that as we know, Trinity is really strategically positioned to avail of bus services, and you can kind of see there the 59 bus routes serve the bus stops located in the immediate surrounding area of the College Green campus. But it's also, as I said before, touching on accessibility to the other remote campus locations, the likes of the Ivy Sports Ground, Santry, etc. So it's seeking improvements through engagement with the NTA, with the bus operators, the PSO operators as well. Is a key part of the plan. So some of the key actions, as I mentioned before, is to increase permeability to the northern side of the campus, as people know. So as we know, there's great access to the east and the west to public transport services, and also to the south through the Nassau Street Gate. But where the campus is somewhat lacking is that permeability along Pearse Street to enhance that public transport access to not only, as I said, future public transport infrastructure, but the likes of the Lewis Green Line, the current DART services, and indeed the Lewis Red Line across the Liffey. Within the campus itself, then it's proposed to provide improved travel information. I know a lot of people these days do tend to rely on their phone, but it's the provision of maybe real-time information in a centralized location, providing for wayfinding to key public transport nodes is something is lacking within the College Green campus at present. And then to support the construction further afield of park and ride facilities, the NTA has a park and ride design office which is delivering a series of park and ride facilities further out from the city centre. And as Shauna alluded to there, we're conscious a lot of students are maybe living at further distances from the city centre at present, and so that could be a key option for students to drive to certain park and road locations and to avail of public transport when they're accessing the city centre. In terms of vehicle access, a lot of time was spent in engaging with, as I said, estates and facilities, and a lot of people on the operations side of things. And it's very clear to us now that the campus it operates on a round the clock basis, and there's certain key points which such as Lincoln Gate, which Shauna alluded to there, which is quite busy in terms of the vehicular access provision it fulfills for the campus itself. As you can see, one of the key findings for us was that 90% of vehicles enter the college via Lincoln Gate. And so some of the initiatives proposed in the city centre transport plan, such as the pedestrianisation of Lincoln Place, has the potential to impact upon those operations, and that was a key concern and something that we looked into in great detail. We developed microsimulation transport models to assess the potential diversionary impacts of those proposals, and it was encouraging to report back to management within the university that the campus will still continue to function. The proposals, while they may implement slightly different traffic management measures, it will still provide for the access needs of the campus. And then, I suppose, in greater kind of more micro level detail, we considered the provision of car parking within the campus itself. And as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, it would be a key mobility management measure to review the current parking provision and to provide for people, I guess, who need access to car parking, people with maybe mobility impairments or disabilities, and to kind of review the quality of that car parking, relative to end of journey or destinations, and to provide for appropriate car parking. As we noted throughout the campus, a lot of car parking, particularly from a disability perspective, is not quite to the standard that's required in terms of location or layout. And then a final observation, really, in relation to a key finding in relation to vehicular access, really, is the extent to which vehicle access is permitted throughout the campus, to the point where this is having a negative impact on the general environment for pedestrians and cyclists, who we want to encourage to access the campus in a safe manner. So the key actions that are emerging from this theme of vehicular access is to undertake a more detailed car parking survey to identify certain locations where parking might be underutilised, and there may be a more efficient use of space, where we might look and consider the use of or provision for maybe last mile delivery options, mobility hubs, etc. To upgrade the existing disabled car parking spaces within the campus and to bring them all to the required standard. To maybe look at a more efficient means of controlling access to the campus, particularly at Lincoln Gate, as Shauna alluded to the challenges that are faced by cyclists, but also in terms of monitoring the access for general vehicular access and service delivery access. It is still done on a manual basis, and is quite dated at this stage in terms of its efficiency. So it would be one of the key actions will be to introduce something in a more advanced measure, which will then lend itself to provision of or monitoring of certain types of vehicles accessing the campus. There's a lot of white vans which deliver for DHL, UPS, etc., which I suppose there's not a great level of oversight in terms of the number and quantum of those type of vehicles. And then a further study, which is to be prepared. I suppose we've prepared an outline freight management study which considers connectivity to the campus in Collins Green, but obviously then the other remote campus locations as well. But it's to take that on to the next level and go into some more detail. But as I said, the greater level of data that can be gleaned from current service access needs, the more detail we can go into in that freight management study. And then, in relation to not only the plan does not only consider the traditional educational uses of the campus, but obviously a key component to the operation of the campus is from the visitor and tourism perspective. And we spent a good bit of time with Trinity Tourism to try and understand the kind of current usage patterns and kind of level of visitor that quantum of visitor that visits the campus. As you can see there, one of the key findings is that, for example, the Bucket Kells, which is the main tourist attraction in the campus, has almost 1 million people visited per year. So it leads to kind of certain hotspots in relation to kind of particularly pedestrian access to the site. to the campus. When we look at front arch, at times there can be an unhealthy level of congestion there from pedestrian activity perspective. So it's really to kind of look and consider whether more can be made of other access points, and maybe through the provision and promotion of different forms of accessing the campus, that might lend itself to a more equitable use of the kind of pathways through the campus and the different access points. So on the point of active travel specifically, it was noted that, you know, that there isn't great encouragement for people to walk and cycle to the campus. Obviously, most people will end up visiting the campus by foot on their last part of their journey, but really, I suppose that there's not great information dissemination in terms of the use of cycling in particular as a means to access the campus. So that's maybe a key action to look at and to improve upon, and then to ensure that within the campus itself, the access routes primarily used for tourists through the campus are provided to a level where they facilitate universal access, and there's a clear wayfinding strategy to inform pedestrians visiting the site maybe for once and once only, that they can find their way around to the main attractions. So that's really a summary, I suppose, in terms of the initiatives. As Claire said, there's 59 actions contained in the plan. So what we've done today is try and give people just a general flavour under the 5 broad themes, but we'd welcome the opportunity to meet with people in person next week on the 25th of September, and we'd be happy to field any queries or concerns that people might have about the plan. But really, as we said before, we're here to listen to people's ideas and suggestions in regard to the plan itself, and whether there's certain initiatives or measures that people out there as part of the wider college community consider would be of value to the campus travel plan for the next 5 years. So I'll hand back to Claire. Thank you.
And Shauna, for that really comprehensive overview of the campus travel plan. I think it's been really helpful, and you made it really clear on, I suppose, the kind of key actions that you feel are needed to make it as easy as possible for our staff and our students to take a sustainability first approach when making their travel decisions, and ultimately to reduce our transport emissions. So thank you for your time and for all the work that you've done on the plan. If anybody wants to look at the plan in more detail, it is available in the sustainability section of the website. And then there'll also be a link to the survey as well. Just to remind you again that you can join us next Thursday, the 25th, between 11 and 4 in the atrium. Also, just to note, there is an executive summary as well for those who maybe don't want to read the more detailed document, but the executive summary is also on the website, and will be, the sustainability team will be in the arts building the following week as well. So have a look, get engaged, complete the very short survey, and we look forward to you all playing your part in our journey towards net zero in 2040. Thank you.